guess what year this following quote was written in an American magazine article by a preeminent American economist? Here's the quote. If in every large city, thousands of persons must continue to work hard and get less than a living, the fact is an indictment of civilization. We'll reveal who said it and when later in this episode. But the moral of the story is this. These words could have been written pretty much any year in American history. Has there been a time when we haven't had hardworking people get less than a living from their employers? And yet, conventional thinking is that we get what we deserve. In today's episode, we want to flip the conventional and consider how anyone and everyone could get more than just a living and still encourage competitive capitalism.
Wait, is that even possible? Or are we being too idealistic? I mean, seriously, I don't know.
Well, let's find out.
So, hello and welcome to Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. We believe when conventional financial thinking doesn't get you where you want to go, you need wealth wisdom. And I will tell you, we need a lot of that today. So hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like and comment below because that really helps us. And share this video with a friend because that also is encouraging for us and for them.
Yeah. And if you missed our last episode, our podcast is officially 5 years old. We've been doing this show for 5 years. Can you imagine?
So back in episode 1, we did share a story. And don't forget, go back and listen to it just to say how crazy we were. Right. But I was talking about a story of somebody, family member, who ate rat poison and didn't even realize it. I mean, literally, the title was, if it were a snake, it would have bitten you. We love exposing ideas on this show that are right under people's noses if they care to look or were courageous enough to open their eyes. I mean, seriously, who eats rat poison? In that first episode, we talked about the idea that half of all retirees are forced into retirement. And this has been 5 years. I'm seeing it in real life now with so many people redefining retirement to be earlier and all about creating passive income. We felt the need to highlight the idea again that there's significant chance that we don't get to choose when we want retirement or not, even though, all that stuff is going on.
So the episode 1, we chose the big thing of income. And we talked about how even if you don't plan to need income in retirement, you plan to always work, the chances that 1 out of 2 that you'll be forced into retirement. And our whole idea there is that just because you're forced into retirement, that's not an excuse not to take control. And in fact, it might be the biggest reason to take control. But we want to come back to this idea of income and talk about here, now, way before retirement. What if we could take more control of our income today? It often feels like we can't, but what if we could?
Yeah. And thinking about that, the world has changed over the past 5 years. I mean, seriously, we've had a pandemic, we've had financial challenges globally and nationally.
There's wars.
So many things that we would never have thought of, but is happening. And so you might have seen that or are seeing it. One of the things that's gotten a lot worse is housing affordability. The 2023 Harvard study related to housing reports that housing affordability is the worst it's been in decades. I mean, that's frankly sad.
Yeah. If you've been watching housing prices, rent rates, interest rates, all the things that impact housing affordability. And then we also looked up the 2023 Retirement Readiness Survey from the Employee Benefit Research Institute. And they've been doing this the longest survey running on retirement readiness. And they report some dire findings this year. They found that, quote, the effects of inflation are heavy on Americans' minds as 84% of workers and 67% of retirees are concerned that the increasing cost of living will make it harder for them to save money. They're essentially saying because of inflation, I can't even save money anymore. And another quote, 3/4 of workers report that they are concerned their salary will not be able to keep up with inflation. That's 3 out of 4, 75%. Their salary is not keeping up with inflation. Inflation's been in the news a lot, but we have to talk about the other side of inflation: income, salaries, wages, our ability to earn a living so that we can keep up with inflation and be able to save for the future.
Yeah. And as we record this episode, maybe, you're going to watch this in a year from now or 5 years from now. But as we record this episode today, workers are striking in the auto industry and in Hollywood, of all things. I mean, like, seriously, I'm not following all of that, but I hear all the strikes. I hope these shows come back.
But also, we want the writers and the actors in those shows to be paid fairly for the amazing work that they do, that we get to enjoy. I mean, we are paying every month for a streaming service to be able to watch them. That money should be going to them, not some already rich CEOs. But anyway, we digress.
And unless you've been living under a rock or as a hermit, or you're like Amanda wanting to live in, I don't know, some...
Oh, I want to live on an eco village. Yeah.
That's what she wants to do.
One day.
You're probably well aware of how wages haven't kept up with either living standards or productivity. It's not just a pandemic or post-pandemic thing. It's gotten worse and worse over decades. I remember having this conversation in 2008, right? And it's especially for people who get paid minimum wages. Now, the problem is pouring into higher wage workers as well now. And it was like a minimum wage thing, I think, in 2008. And now it's starting to get into a lot more higher income.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, but even people who get higher than minimum wage, their wages aren't keeping up with inflation. It's not just a minimum wage issue. And wages are a hot topic. It's one of the ways that we can trace the history of wages is really thinking about the economic thinking about minimum wages, because that kind of sets the foundation for how we think about all wages, and the fight over whether there should be a minimum wage, what it should be, those kind of things tell us a lot about how economists, politicians, employers, everybody thinks about wages in general and how much to pay people. So if we go back and look at fighting about minimum wages, and we can go back to the late 1800s, and other places in the world, they're already enacting minimum wages. Here in the US, the popular thinking was, well, if laborers could just increase their productivity, then employers could pay them more. And then, as long as laborers are being more and more productive, they could get paid more and more, and there's no end in sight. There's no top to that. Therefore, minimum wage laws aren't needed. And the early minimum wage laws that ended up being adopted at a state level were more limited to women and children. It was like, if you're going to employ women and children, you need to pay them at least this amount. But then even those state laws were ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, which is just, I don't know, like, it's a thing. It was true. It's just part of our history. And that was between so the state laws were late 1800s, early 1900s, but they were ruled unconstitutional in the 1920s and 30s.
Now, here's the quote we started with in the beginning of the episodes. It's from 1913. You thought it was 2023, but it's 1913, and written by one of the most prominent American economists of the late 1800s and early 1900s. You probably don't even know who it is, but his name is John Bates Clark.
Yeah, he was actually called the first world-known American economist. Of all the economists around the world, he was the first one known from America around the world.
Now, I want to restate the quote. Now you know the context, right? Because context is really important. And the quote is, if in every large city, thousands of persons must continue to work hard and get less than a living, the fact is an indictment of civilization. Now tell me, couldn't that be today? I mean,
right.
Literally. Yeah.
Well, now, so Mr. Clark, to be clear, economist John Bates Clark was against a minimum wage for the most part. This article that this came from 1913, if you read through the article, which you don't need to, we'll tell you what's here, but you can find it online. He only supported minimum wages at a very low level. He might actually be the origin of the idea that increasing minimum wages kill jobs. You can find that in this article if as you read it. But he was all for still setting at least a very low minimum wage and paying workers more based on their productivity, not just on this minimum wage. He's like, encourage them to be productive, make sure they can be productive, and then pay them based on their productivity. He didn't want it to be a government mandated thing.
Yeah.
So in essence, he wasn't he was against a minimum wage, but he was for companies paying workers based on their productivity.
Finally instituted a national minimum wage in the USA in 1938. 1938. Again, this is not we're going to get to how this impacts you, but we want to look at context. So FDR was pushing for it much earlier than the Great Depression. And here's the quotation from 1933. And I promise we're going to get to some why you should care about this.
Yeah, think of this 90 years later, that this was said 90 years ago in 1933 by Franklin Roosevelt. Ready for this? Quote, "It seems to me to be equally plain that no business which depends for existence on paying less than living wages to its workers has any right to continue in this country. By quote unquote business, I mean the whole of commerce as well as the whole of industry. By workers, I mean all workers, the white collar class as well as the men in overalls. And by living wages, I mean more than a bare subsistence level. I mean the wages of decent living." Is that a good impression of FDR? I have no idea if that's how he.
I don't think so. He wasn't British.
But he was like pompish, right? Like he was from the wealthy class.
Okay.
Like we read Eleanor, right? He would have been that high class society New Yorker. That's maybe how he would have talked. Anyway, maybe. I don't want you to get lost in the really bad impression. He's talking about if a business can't pay people living wages, it should not be in business.
So after we
butchered that
on beyond Amanda's FDR, I don't know what you call it. So the United States finally got a minimum wage in 1938. But it initially exempted large portions of the workforce and set rates that became effectively obsolete during World War II. Later amendments raised minimum wages, but coverage did not expand until 1961. That's a long time. The state led the way in rates and coverage in the 1940s and 50s, and again since the 1980s. But today, many states' minimum wages are much higher than the federal minimum wage. So it looks like the states are leading the way, not
just like they did over 100 years ago, for sure. So it's been a roller coaster of this whole minimum wage things. And we look at kind of the economic theory that led all these changes in this roller coaster behind minimum wages, somewhere in the 1960s, 1970s. I wasn't alive then, I don't know. But what I can see is this thread that thinking started to shift, and it became more conventional thinking that high wages for high productivity weren't possible. That this kind of idealism of the late 1800s, that you could pay people for their productivity and there was no ceiling to that, they realized actually there is a ceiling. Now, what changed? Probably a lot. We need to go to the scholars and the historians to ask them. Perhaps
listen to this podcast because we'll keep learning.
Perhaps we started trusting companies that they would pay good wages. It's not as important to really look back, though, and ask what's gone right or what's gone wrong. Sure, we want to learn from history so don't repeat it, but it's more important to consider what could change now and maybe bring back some of those wise actions that we've taken in the past.
Yeah. When it comes down to it, though, we don't want to wait for cities, states, and federal policy to make or increase incomes, right? Otherwise, man, you'll be waiting until you're gray or
maybe
gone,
possibly,
right? Who knows?
But and also not all of us belong to unions that can go strike in order to advocate for fair pay and better benefits and those kind of things. More power to those unions. We want you to keep doing that, but not all of us can.
So what could you do and I do to increase our income here and now? I mean, this is where we get to the brass tacks, if you will. If you want to be responsible adults and are also saving for retirement to make sure we have income in our older years, this is one of the best things that we can do.
Is look at how do we increase our income. So if you go to a search engine or you go to ChatGPT, which yes, I did, and I just said, how can I increase my income? Just look up ways. What are some ways to increase income? There are a lot of possibilities and they're very overwhelming. Some of them may apply to you, may not apply to you. Many of them cost money without the promise of an actual income. It's risky to pay for an education or other startup expenses when you don't know if it's actually going to work.
Yeah.
Ask anyone paying down 6 figures of student debt on a $50,000 a year income, and they'll tell you it doesn't always work like you think it's going to. Plus, some of the options that I saw were clearly borderline could be fraud or Ponzi schemes or put someone in danger of being sued. There's a lot of risk if you try to go after increasing your income. We don't want anybody to take any kind of unnecessary risk.
Yeah. And honestly, we see this all the time as
we're going to get into that.
Yeah. So rather than tell you what to do, we came up with 3 ways to increase income that anyone can do without spending much, if any money, and maybe even without investing a bunch of time. Is that even possible, Amanda?
Well, let's see. So the first idea is to ask for a raise or increase your prices for new customers or new clients if you're setting your own pricing. Yeah. Now, if you're an employee, one of the things that's changed over the last 5 years, particularly the last 3 years, is you become a much more valuable commodity. Ask anybody that's been trying to hire. It's hard to hire new people now. And so if you're already employed, there's a strong possibility that you're worth more now than you were previously. And if you leave, there's going to be all kinds of costs. They're probably going to have to pay the next person more. So why not ask for an increase in your pay? Why not?
Yeah. And if you set your own prices as business owners, be sure you're adjusting prices to keep your own pay and your staff pays high enough to keep up with the inflation. If you're not doing this, and maybe that's a challenge for you, you're like, well, I don't want to. That's part of the reason that we charge a premium for our book and other things that are out there.
Yeah, well, that, and if raising your prices is going to make your business go under, maybe you shouldn't be in business. If you can't pay yourself a profitable wage, maybe you shouldn't be in business. We're big fans of Profit First because they build healthy businesses, not just because it puts more money in owners' pockets. So something to consider. We want all small businesses to succeed, but they have to be profitable in order to succeed.
They have to be a business, not a hobby.
That's exactly. Yeah.
So,
what about number 2?
Yeah, number 2 is move towards excellence. I mean, you'd think this would be a given, but what does that mean? Moving towards excellence.
Yeah. So I thought of a couple of examples here. So let's say you're even a minimum wage wait staff at a 1-star restaurant. You work in that restaurant and you've been doing it for years. It's you have experience. What if you went and applied for a job at a 5-star restaurant to get better tips? Because, people are paying more. 20% of a bigger, plate is more than, 20% of a smaller, restaurant or whatever, but also maybe they pay a higher wage. Or let's say you actually work in a corporate job. Maybe you're in a cubicle and the place that you work is the number 10 player in your industry. And so they have a certain level of profits, certain level of sales. They pay their staff a certain amount. Maybe you look and see that a company in the top 5 actually has better wage reports on some of the wage boards out there when you look on Indeed and that kind of thing, or some of those transparent wage sites. Maybe you see if you can make a switch to a different company in the same industry. It could be a positive income move. Or for business owner and self-employed listeners, maybe it's a move toward improving the quality of the goods and services that you offer so that you can charge more for them and justify that higher rate.
And I do want to go back is don't be just jumping from one thing to another, but maybe retention is important as an employer, that you might, again, go back to number 1 first before you go to number 2.
Right.
And then we go to number 3. Look at your strengths and interests and seek something you'll enjoy and that will help you become the person you want to be. Now, I think this would be obvious, kind of like the other ones. But again, what are your strengths and interests and what do you want to do?
Yeah. So too many people, this is what we see too often. They believe they can just go increase their income and pursue something because it's going to make them the most money. And then they find out that they hate it. And by then it's too late. They've already spent a lot of money learning about this thing, getting it started, putting in the startup costs, those kind of things. So they trudge on doing it, something that they absolutely do not like to do, in order to recoup at least their initial investment in it. And it's actually really hard to make money when people can tell you hate what you're doing.
Yeah.
So sometimes the funds invested are never recouped and they get in the cycle of, well, what if I just spent more on this education thing? Or what if I just spent more on developing this marketing idea? But they don't love it. And so they just get stuck in that cycle, spending more and more and never recouping those funds.
And then they feel like they're living for the weekend.
Yeah.
I feel like that song, everybody's living for the weekend.
Right. And this business that they wanted to start, or this passive income strategy or something, now becomes this chain around their neck that they can't get rid of. So instead, what if you think about what you really enjoy and who you want to become, the personal development you want to do, and test that out, do some volunteering in that area, maybe do it for free for some friends or family, and find out, you do actually like this and you want to do more of it. So then you move forward with as little expense as possible. It's amazing what businesses can be built by broke founders. Daymond John literally wrote the book on how this works. His book is called The Power of Broke. You might check it out from the library. Don't buy it. Go get it from the library. The Power of Broke.
But isn't Daymond John like really rich?
No, but he started FUBU with nothing, nada.
Yeah.
I think eventually when they got to the point where they had to scale, his mother took out a second mortgage against her home or something like that. But that was only because he had proven it being broke.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing to look at is what did he do to get there? And you don't have to just, go find the shark, right? I mean, he might be helpful to do that, but maybe it's how do I do it with what I got? Now, as you go about increasing your income on your own terms, it's very important to consider Parkinson's law. And we have some videos about that somewhere in there. Just search on our YouTube channel, Parkinson's law. But you want to make sure your expenses don't increase right along with your income. I mean, this is the keeping up with the Joneses thing. This is an episode about income, though, not expenses. So we're not going to talk about that, but
just to give you a heads up, it's important.
Yeah.
And we have so much more that we could say about income. So we have some of that more for you waiting in the Wealth Wisdom financial community. We have articles titled How to Make It Easier to Make More Money, How to Manifest More Sales, 5 Ways to Make Money Feel Secure While Income is Variable. You can dig deeper into this whole topic of increasing your income and expanding the resources you have available by visiting www.wealthwisdomfp.com/community. And there you can join the Wealth Wisdom financial community. You can get access to all those resources. It is part of the premium level membership. So make sure you're choosing that one instead of the free one. There's good stuff in the free one, but those articles I just read are part of the premium membership. We can't wait to see you in there. Again, it's wealthwisdomfp.com/community, and we'll have a link below as well.
Awesome. So don't forget, hit that subscribe button because next week we'll be talking on another big topic, debt.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh man, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, again.
It'll be a reprise and revision and share more of what we've learned since we took on the topic in episode 2. Remember, we're talking about episode 1, going back to it. Now we're going to talk a little bit about episode 2, way back in the archives, way back in 2018. And what do we think about that? Has it changed? Do we still think the same? We definitely have some new thoughts to share, and we look forward to sharing those with you soon. So thanks for joining us. Hit that subscribe button and live long and profit.
The topics presented in this podcast are for general information only and not for the purposes of providing legal, accounting, or investment advice. On such matters, please consult a professional who knows your specific situation.